Now we will get on to public hearing, item number 8. We're going to hold the public hearing and take the following actions to approve the Plaza project, a mixed-use project of 406, 418 San Mateo Avenue and associated environmental determinations. Before we get into it, I'd like the city attorney to tell us some stuff here.
Well, that's an open invitation.
Right.
But fortunately, I'll keep it just to the item at hand. Some of the decisions on this particular agenda item require council members to disclose what are called ex-parte communications, and those are communications that you've had with other people about the project. So this is routine. It's required by state law. The planning commissioners do it all the time because they make these kinds of decisions relating to projects. And so now would be the time for each of you to disclose what, if any, communications you've had with other members of the public about the project. And then once that occurs, then you can move into the actual discussion of the item.
Okay, I'll start. I have had communications with the applicant because I'm on the subcommittee that was reviewing this. So I've had a number of discussions with them through City Hall.
I'm also on the subcommittee and had the same discussions and meetings with the applicant.
And I, while not on the subcommittee, I have had 2 meetings with the applicants for interest in the architectural details. And that's good.
I'm going to sound boring. I'm not on the subcommittee, and I have had no interaction or discussion with the applicant or developer. I did sit in the planning commission when in the audience and did not speak as it was brought forward to the commission for consideration that obviously they approved and was brought here.
Michael, you clean?
I'm clean. I did receive an email from the applicant, which I did not reply to, so that I would have nothing to disclose.
Okay. Mark,
And-
anything else?
That'll do it. Thank you very
Oh.
much.
I have to recuse myself for the first 4 items of the 6 because I own property within the
500
area,
feet.
within the area.
Yes.
So I will come back after that.
Okay. Check on the score. I don't want to know. We don't want to know. That's what we got. Okay. We're going to hold this public hearing, item number 1, and we'll take these individually, the first 4, and then we'll bring Irene back. We won't close the public hearing. We'll just continue it. Adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the San Bruno 2009 general plan to conditionally allow ground floor residential uses on all streets in the downtown CBD Central Business District character area except San Mateo Avenue. David?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'd like to give you a brief introduction and then also talk to you about the approach to the conduct of this meeting. First off, last year in February of 2013, after 4 years of effort by this community, San Bruno adopted its transit corridors plan, its San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan. This is a plan that looks at revitalizing San Bruno's downtown areas, say along San Mateo Avenue and other connecting streets such as El Camino Real, Huntington Avenue, and San Bruno Avenue. I'm pleased to say tonight that this is the first project that has come forward for consideration within the Transit Corridors Plan area since the TCP was adopted in February of 2013. This project offers an opportunity to look at a mixed-use project near to transit that brings housing and commercial in combination to our downtown. It's at a key location. It's at the intersection of El Camino Real and San Mateo Avenue. It's an anchor location. It's an opportunity really for a catalyst project to initiate other projects within the TCP area. Tonight, as we move forward with this project, Associate Planner Matt Neubaumer is going to provide a staff presentation and talk to you about the existing conditions and other aspects of the project. As far as the overall conduct of the meeting, I would expect that Matt would provide the presentation to you, the staff presentation. You would ask questions of clarification. At that point, there would be an opportunity for the applicant Signature Development to provide a presentation. There would be questions of clarification of Signature Development. And then at that point, there would be an opportunity for the mayor to open the public hearing. The public hearing would be opened and stay open until final action is taken. And the idea at that point would be that the public would be invited to comment on the project. We're dividing this into two separate actions. So as indicated by Councilmember O'Connell, she'll be recusing herself from items 1 through 4. So in Mr. Neubaumer's presentation, he'll be presenting items 1 through 4 first. We'll go through full discussion of those, leading to an action of council. And then after that item, those items have been considered, then we'll continue our presentation on items 5 and 6 in the agenda. And again, we would follow the same procedure, the staff presentation followed by clarification. The applicant would be invited to make a presentation, questions of clarification. The public would be invited to comment on items 5 and 6, and then your action would be taken. The staff did receive a number of comments on this project. We received some email correspondence, and Mr. Neubaumer in his presentation will address those questions and comments, but I'd like to give you a sense of the sorts of comments and questions that we received. We received questions regarding the noticing that was done for this project and the level of public outreach. We also were asked about what the consultant that we employed for this project, the design consultant we employed for this project, what were his recommendations and were they followed? We also had questions regarding the parking requirements. We had a parking study done, question having to do with the extent of area and streets that were considered in this parking study. We also had questions regarding the neighborhood meeting that was held for this project and how many people attended. There was a question about how typical is it that there are amendments to, say, the specific plan and the general plan for a project like this, given the fact that we just recently adopted the transit corridors plan. And I should point out that it's very typical that this sort of thing occurs. A document like a specific plan or general plan evolves and is amended over time to reflect the community's interests and needs. So at this point in time, as we look at refinement of a document like this, it would be fairly typical to expect that there would be requests for consideration of amendments. That's very standard, very typical with documents like this. I think that those are some of the key questions that came up. We also did receive an email late today from an individual indicating some support for the project, and Mr. Neubaumer, I believe, has provided a copy of that email correspondence to our city clerk, which I believe has been forwarded on to council members. With that, I would ask that Mr. Neubaumer stand up and provide the presentation, the staff presentation, and we would be happy to respond to any of your questions. Thank you.
Matt, is it your intention to address all 4 of these items now?
Correct, yes.
Okay, then let me go through them. I read the first one. The second one is adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan to conditionally allow ground floor residential uses on all streets in the downtown CBD character except San Mateo Avenue. Number 3 is waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance amendment, Chapter 12.96.120 of Title 12, Land Use of the San Bruno Municipal Code to conditionally allow ground floor residential uses on all streets in the downtown CBD zoning district except San Mateo Avenue, and to ensure density requirements and setback requirements are consistent with the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan. And lastly, number 4, adopt a resolution approving a conditional use permit to allow ground floor residential uses and a parking exception to allow the proposed development with the number of units and parking spaces currently proposed.
Thank you, and good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Matt Neubaumer. I'm an associate planner with the Community Development Department. The item before the council tonight is the proposed mixed-use development known as the Plaza, and it's located at 406-418 San Mateo Avenue. The project includes a 3-story mixed-use development containing both a commercial and residential component. Total of 83 residential units are proposed, and the unit breakdown on that would be 2 studio units, 43 one-bedroom units, 32 bedroom units, and 8 3-bedroom units. 6,975 square feet of commercial space is also proposed that would front San Mateo Avenue. Additionally, a subgrade garage containing 106 parking spaces is also proposed. Access to the subgrade garage would be achieved via Mastic Avenue. The site is located at the southern entrance to downtown San Bruno on the corner of San Mateo and Taylor Avenue. Commercial businesses are located to the north of the subject site, and residential uses are located to the east and south. The site is 0.95 acres, and the project site consists of 4 lots. The largest lot is developed with the former Cinema Theater building. The 3 smaller sites are developed with vacant buildings. As you can see from the photos included within the PowerPoint presentation, the buildings are in a significant state of disrepair and really present a poor image as a gateway to downtown San Bruno. The site has been an attractant for nuisances, including illegal dumping and graffiti over the years. The existing structures would be demolished as a result of this project. I would like to point out that the project is located at the southern entrance to downtown, and the site has a general plan designation of transit-oriented development. The site is also located within the transit corridor plan area. Within the transit corridor plan area, there are 5 different character areas, and this site is located within the CBD, or Central Business District, character area. Additionally, the zoning designation for the property is CBD, Central Business District. There are a number of approvals being requested tonight. Of those, there's an amendment to the general plan, transit corridors plan, zoning code, as well as a conditional use permit and parking exception. The current general plan, transit corridor plan, and zoning code all require that residential uses be located on the upper stories of buildings. As proposed, the project contains 83 residential units, of which 21 of those residential units would be located on the ground floor level. Therefore, staff is recommending that the general plan, transit corridor plan, and the zoning code be amended to conditionally allow residential units on the ground floor level, subject to obtaining the conditional use permit. And as the community development director indicated, it is typical to amend policy documents such as the general plan and transit corridor plan to essentially address community interests. In this particular case, the CBD character area includes several feeder streets where it may be appropriate to consider residential uses on the ground floor level, subject to obtaining that conditional use permit. The conditional use permit process would allow for residential uses within the downtown to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. The overall intent of the conditional use permit process is to evaluate the proposed project in relation to its surrounding environment and to ensure that it will be consistent with and complement existing land uses. Typically in a downtown environment, it's best to have active uses on your main street. In this case, the main street is San Mateo Avenue. As proposed, there's 6,975 square feet of retail space along San Mateo Avenue. The project also includes residential units on the ground floor level, fronting Taylor Avenue and Mastic Avenue. Staff finds that the residential units will help blend the project with the surrounding residential environment. I'd also like to point out that the zoning code would be amended to ensure all setbacks and density requirements are consistent with the transit corridors plan. In regards to parking, a subgrade parking structure containing 106 parking spaces is proposed. The garage would provide parking for the residential component of the project. However, retail customers would not be able to access this garage. It's a secured garage. It's important to note that the transit corridor plan provides a baseline for parking standard guidelines, which will provide the framework for the parking component during the comprehensive zoning code update. Based on the parking standard guidelines within the TCP, a total of 83 to 121 parking spaces would be required for the residential component, so there's a range there. As proposed, the project fits within this range, as 106 parking spaces are provided. The transit corridor plan parking standards were thoughtfully developed during the development of the TCP, which involved experts and community members, and are consistent with current parking and planning practices. In general, households within mixed-use development environments near transit stations essentially don't require as many parking spaces because they're not as reliant on the automobile. More so, they're reliant on public transportation. In this particular instance, the site is adjacent to existing bus routes, as well as the Caltrain station and the BART station. I'd also like to point out that the applicant is proposing transportation demand management measures. This is known as TDM for short. The intent of a TDM program is to reduce the number of vehicle trips to and from the project site, which would also help reduce the overall demand for parking. I'll just go into some of the details regarding the proposed TDM measures. They are proposing to provide secure, long-term bicycle parking. Specifically, 54 bicycle parking spaces would be located within the garage and on the ground floor level. Short-term bicycle parking would be provided within the public right-of-way along San Mateo Avenue, and there would be enough for 10 spaces there. Additionally, transit subsidies would be distributed to residents and employees. Specifically, residents and employees would be distributed a Clipper card that is preloaded with $50. Transportation information would also be distributed to employees and residents, as well as an on-site rideshare program would be provided on-site. I'd also like to point out that staff did consult with a local transportation firm to conduct a detailed parking study. As indicated, the project does not provide parking for the retail customers. The study included all downtown parking lots, and there's a total of 8 downtown parking lots, plus the surrounding residential streets. There's approximately, or actually there is 21 residential street segments that were included within this survey, and they're bounded by Sylvan Avenue to the north, Chapman and Georgia Avenue to the south, Linden Avenue to the west, and Milton Avenue to the east. The parking counts were conducted on Saturday, June 7th, and Tuesday, June 10th. All the counts were conducted on the same times on both days, 12:30 p.m., 7:30 p.m., and 1 a.m. When you combine the entire parking study area, the occupancy rate falls between 50% and 69%, which is less than the 85% threshold that staff considers when determining if an area is parking impacted. The entire parking study is included as attachment 16 within the City Council staff report. I'd also like to point out that technically a parking exception is required for this project, as the project is subject to the parking regulations found within the current San Bruno Municipal Code. It's important to note that the San Bruno Municipal Code is not consistent with the parking guidelines within the TCP. Based on the San Bruno Municipal Code requirements, 174 parking spaces would be required for the residential component of the project. The San Bruno Municipal Code standards are outdated and are based on national guidelines that are typically based on suburban locations that really don't take into consideration proximity to local transit. It's also worth noting that the former uses on the site, which included about 23,000 square feet of commercial space in the former theater building and the 3 adjacent restaurants to the north, required a total of 131 parking spaces per the San Bruno Municipal Code standards. However, only 34 parking spaces were provided on site, leaving a deficit of 97 parking spaces. In terms of neighborhood outreach, the applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting on July 9th, 2014 at the Decima Elementary School multi-purpose room. 10 members of the public were present at that meeting. There was a very positive initial reaction to the project, and various questions came up in terms of hours of construction, ownership versus rental units, general rental rates. There was also some members of the public who expressed concern with parking. However, the neighborhood consensus was that the project would improve a section of downtown that has been vacant and underutilized for many years. In addition, the neighborhood has been informed about the project through a total of 4 mailed notices, and you can see from the graphic up there, the project site is located at the very bottom, and there's a 600-foot radius around the project site. This is in excess of the required 300-foot state notification requirement. In addition, property owners within 300 feet of the CBD character area were notified before the Planning Commission and City Council meeting, and that is also referenced within the graphic in the PowerPoint presentation. With that, staff recommends that the City Council approve the associated resolutions to amend the general plan, transit corridor plan, and zoning code, as well as to approve the conditional use permit request and parking exception request. This concludes the first portion of our staff presentation tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any clarifying questions that you have. Thank you.
Any questions for Matt at this time? Ken?
Well, initially, I just wanted to make it clear, why is the city council approving or reviewing this project, and not just the planning commission?
And that's a great question. The project did go through the architectural review process, the planning commission process, and city council action is required due to the proposed amendments to the general plan, transit corridor plan, and zoning code.
So the follow-up to my question is why would the city council be even reviewing 5 and 6?
Well, it's typical of staff to include the entitlements in a bulk project, in bulk style. So we take the entire project forward to the approval body and not break it up.
All right. Any other questions of staff at this time?
Through the chair.
Michael?
So my question is, the transit corridor plan is a fairly recent construction, and it didn't take into account the possibility of sometime in the future having ground floor units, and I'm wondering why that wasn't initially accounted for in the transit corridor plan.
Councilmember, I'd be happy to respond to that. I think that the next step, or one of the next steps to implement the transit corridors plan, is to update the zoning code, which is underway currently. As the city would update the zoning code, the city would look more carefully and do refinement to the transit corridors plan. As staff has been working with the update to the zoning code, one of the areas that we've looked at is something that Mr. Neubaumer mentioned in his presentation. As we look at blending uses at ground floor, say for example in this case, where on Mastic there are residential uses, and on some of the feeder streets to San Mateo Avenue, it could make sense to have, say, residential uses on feeder streets on ground floor and focus commercial opportunities to our main downtown street. With that sort of refinement, updating the zoning code, we would oftentimes look at then coming back and doing amendments to the transit corridors plan or a specific plan like this to then put in place that refinement and to make sure that that refinement is consistent between the zoning code and the transit corridors plan. Because we have not finished the zoning code update and this project has come before us, there are a number of things that we're looking at and actually bringing to you for consideration for amendment. So for example, the parking requirement. The transit corridors parking requirement has not yet been implemented in terms of the zoning code update. So one of the actions before you tonight is to consider amending the zoning code to make sure that the parking standard of the TCP is consistent with the zoning code. So this sort of back and forth refinement as you take a higher level document like a transit corridors plan specific plan and bring it into the zoning code, a more nuts and bolts implementation document, is very typical, very standard.
So you mentioned the parking, and the way I read this, we are granting an exemption to the parking rather than amending the codes to accommodate the parking. So it sounded like you just said that we're changing the code to meet the corridor plan's guideline versus what's in the municipal code. So are we making an exemption to the municipal code, or are we changing the municipal code?
In the case of the parking exception, we have not completed the zoning code update. We're still working with the current zoning code. So the action before you on parking is to look at the current zoning code and do an exception. So that's an exception working with the current zoning code. So we haven't completed the zoning code update. But with respect to ground floor residential uses, we don't have that opportunity. We have to come before you and say, in this case, our suggestion in terms of blending residential on ground floor to Mastic and Taylor, we need to look for an amendment to the zoning code in that case, in that particular case. We don't have the availability of an exemption, or I'm sorry, an exception.
Okay. And just in general, we're still making, we're taking a hard line on no residential on the first floor on San Mateo Avenue. And why do we want to take that position?
We want to take that position because San Mateo Avenue is our downtown commercial street, and we feel strongly that that's the area where we should primarily focus our commercial activities. And in other areas like a back street like Mastic, which faces residential, there'd be an opportunity there to consider on a case-by-case basis with a conditional use permit, perhaps residential there. But the core street, the downtown core street, that's where we should focus our commercial activities. And so we're not recommending that you consider non-commercial uses there. Keep that commercial.
Even if the situation were that we're in dire shortage of housing and not necessarily people beating down our doors to open small retail stores, we're still going to be locked into that position where that's what we want to have, but not necessarily what the economy would push for.
I wouldn't say it that way. I would say at this point in time, we see that the downtown street, San Mateo Avenue, is best used for commercial. If some point in the future we would determine that we have a circumstance like you described, council member, then there is the opportunity to serve community interest to consider amending the code. But at this time, we're suggesting that there is opportunity to focus our commercial activities on San Mateo Avenue, and we're not recommending at this time that you would consider allowing residential uses there. It could be at some point in the future, community interest suggests going a different direction, but not at this time is our recommendation.
Okay. And then more specifically, I saw in some of the documents that we're striking out references to density. We're removing, I believe it was in the municipal code, we took out the part where density was referenced, and then there's another one where we're adding a line that specifically says there are no density requirements. I spent some time looking through the transit corridor plan, and it's a huge document, and I may have missed it, but I didn't see anything in there that had a specific maximum density for the area. Is that in there somewhere, or?
The transit corridors plan addresses density in this way. In the TCP area overall, the environmental document and approach is that up to 1,610 residential units would be allowed in the area. And it's required that the city monitor the number of units that are added to the area over time. So there is not a specific density limit per parcel or property, but there is an overall maximum capacity of 1,610 units. That's why you see density struck, because of that approach.
So we're taking it in whole for the entire area.
That's right. We're looking at the entire area and looking at development proposals on a case-by-case basis and evaluating what makes most sense in terms of proximity to transit and the overall mix of land uses in terms of, say, office, residential, services, and retail. So the approach is to look at an overall density limit of 1,610 units and not on a case-by-case basis or property-by-property basis.
So it makes it difficult for a person to know how dense we're going to get. I mean, it's kind of conceptual, this larger idea, but I mean, is there some translation that you could do in terms of the maximum number of units that you could fit and how many people that would be? I mean,
well, the translation is, an average throughout the TCP area of about 22 units per acre. That's a translation. That's one way to look at it. But again, our focus would be to try to mix housing with other land uses in the most appropriate locations. But overall, the average would be about 22 units per acre through the TCP area. That's one way to look at it. And again, it will require that we monitor the overall number of units allowed over time on a parcel-by-parcel basis.
And how does that, the number I saw in here, I believe, was 1 unit per 1,000 square feet?
In this case, there are 83 units being proposed. It's about 1 acre of property
Okay.
in this particular case. Now, keep in mind, this is at a gateway location. It's an opportunity to bring people to our downtown, people who would potentially use our shops and restaurants very close to transit, Caltrain BART, and a bus line that would take people to BART 600 feet away. So at this point, we're really looking at an opportunity to kind of energize the downtown with population, with people. The overall TCP area, as you know, allows for a full broad range of uses from office to residential to services to retail. But with this initial project, we're looking at 83 residential units.
So could I interpret what you just said to mean that this is on the denser side of what we would see in the overall development?
Absolutely. This is very much on the denser side in terms of residential units that we would see within the project area. Again, we're looking at an overall average density of about 22 units per acre. In some cases, for example, in the transit station area, as you know, because of the noise limitations, because of airport use, we can't have any additional residential units in that area at all. So a whole area of the TCP area would be precluded from having residential units.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Anything else for staff this time? Rico?
Real quick, I just wanted to clarify, as I said at the commission meeting, there were some things, and some things may have been modified a little bit
Yes.
between that and here. And again, I just sat and listened and then left quickly, but just to clarify, I know there was discussion about the gym being on the ground floor on the street. The applicant did say it was about bringing activity and light and stuff like that. My understanding is now that has been moved from the street further in. Just I want that cleared up because
Yes.
obviously the commission was said one way, and so now I just want that clear.
And you're correct. At the commission, what was proposed is a fitness room on ground floor on San Mateo Avenue. And that fitness room, that gym use, has been relocated since the Planning Commission hearing from first floor San Mateo Avenue to second floor, and in its place would be the opportunity for a commercial use. Staff supports that. It really provides an opportunity for the majority, nearly all of the San Mateo Avenue frontage to be commercial, to provide the opportunity in that horizontal width for a range of different tenants. So that space, which Matt had indicated to be about 6,900 square feet of commercial space, could be divided in a variety of ways depending on the type of tenant or number of tenants being proposed on ground floor. At this time, the vision is certainly to energize San Mateo Avenue with retail and commercial uses, restaurants, and create a very active, dynamic streetscape. So we're very supportive of that shift.
And thank you, and so am I. That was one thing I had that I thought, okay, let's hold off for a couple weeks because it'll be up here. But I appreciate that, and also there's the interior hallway for the commercial, which I
Yes.
think was important, so I'm glad to see that that's there.
Yes.
You somewhat, and again, I wasn't on the subcommittee, I didn't speak to the applicant, I'm just always, my concerns are always as far as lighting, as far as aesthetics, as far as graffiti abatement, as far as those type of concerns that affect the community on a day-to-day basis. Could you address any of those items as far as?
I think in terms of...
And I know there's a lot, but I'm bringing it forward here so that it's reaffirmed.
Sure. You know, in terms of what we have there today, I'll start with what we have there today. We have a complex of buildings. We have the old cinema building, and we have 3 other commercial buildings formerly used as bars that are vacant, that have been vacant for approximately 10 years. We, on a regular basis, get phone calls regarding graffiti abatement on those properties. On a regular basis, we get phone calls regarding people going into those structures, vandalizing, breaking into those structures, going within them, spending time within them, and there's a need for our police department, our code enforcement staff to follow up on those calls. So that's what we've been dealing with. With the proposed project, all of those buildings would be demolished and removed, and the project that we are describing to you tonight would be placed in that area. It's anticipated that the project could, if approved, would go forward, and the demolition could occur as soon as, say, next summer sometime, with construction to begin thereafter, and the building to be completed sometime early 2017. The aesthetics in the second part of this presentation tonight, we'll get into more discussion about the architecture, the colors, the materials, and the aesthetics of the proposed project.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything else? See, the applicant is here. Would you like to address the council before we open the public hearing?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Appreciate it very much to have the honor and opportunity to present tonight. It's been a great process, and we're happy to be here, and hopefully we will perform for you. My name's Tom Qualia. I'm a partner and project manager of Signature Development Group. It's a 40-plus year privately held development company, family-owned. We actually are owners as well as employees. We have a long history of infill development, including mixed use, and in all of the surrounding areas, including San Francisco and Oakland and down in the South Bay. We just finished up in San Francisco. We just started a mixed-use project in downtown Oakland and are excited to be here for this great site. Before we even started working with staff, one of the huge challenges was to gain control of this property. Very, very complicated ownership situation, very fragmented. And myself personally, I spent a year and a half, if you will, chasing the control of the site. And quite frankly, we got lucky. We were able to gain control of the property to allow us to start the process. What this conclusion here is tonight, hopefully, is really what one of the planning commissioners said. Really, the project and proposal that's before you tonight is the evidence of all the work that was done on the TCP for a couple of years by both your council, your planning commission, and your community groups. This proposal translates the TCP to actually boots on the ground. And in answer to the council members' questions, the TCP is a specific plan. It will be, and it is, a living and breathing document. And it continues to have to be a living and breathing document with push and pull, especially for developers and planners, because the area in downtown San Bruno is very fragmented. It's very, very difficult to assemble properties and then be able to take a rigid document and apply it in all cases. So I commend the explanation of how staff presented it today, because it really needs a push me, pull me. We have actually met with staff on other occasions on other properties, and it's difficult. We're grinding away trying to get more opportunities here, but having that flexibility in understanding the document is very important. This was a collaborative effort. We started with the subcommittee of the TCP. We then moved on to numerous meetings at ARC, and then on to the Planning Commission, Parking Council, and all along the way we had input from many people, the design consultant as well as staff represented in this. And then even since the Planning Commission has duly noted, we made more refinements, if you will, and we'll get into those a little bit more. But the relocation of the rec area upstairs, the enhancement of the retail along the ground floor, the creation of the corridor, all these things was the work of the village, if you will, coming together with this plan before you. The project will transform, as you guys know, dilapidated buildings, and it'll do two things. It'll take great advantage of a really good transit site. We do transit-oriented development. This is a poster child. So that's one of the really good things that can happen on. The second is it'll help hopefully vitalize downtown and kind of start to add to the momentum that is there now. I don't live here, so I the history, I kind of grew up in South City and down in Mountain View, but anytime you have investment in downtown, it's got to be a good thing. And from a planning principle standpoint, bringing beds and disposable incomes to downtown is also a very, very good thing. So it takes advantage of a great transit site. It takes advantage of a really, really good document in the TCP, and it asks for, some massaging of that as we go along. Signature Development Group, we take this very seriously. We're interested in this project, but we're interested in the next one and the next one. You can go and touch and feel of our projects. We took it very seriously here as we worked through this process. We used very good architects that had experience here from the project before, used a really good landscape architect, and feel that we have a very comprehensive plan with you for your consideration. Based on all of this, Signature Development's ready to make a $35 to $40 million investment in downtown with the improvements for this particular building. We don't take that lightly, obviously. It's our money. We're a private company. So we appreciate that. I wanted to just clarify one thing that, the ground floor units on Mastic and Taylor are structurally on the ground, but they're slightly elevated just because of the grade change, and there are no front doors out there. So the idea, though, was you don't have active coming and going and all that type of stuff to impact those two residential streets adjacent to us. The other thing I wanted to point out was the TDM measures and the graffiti. It's a rental building. We own the building, we manage the building. So it would be like us owning our own house, if you will. So if in fact there is graffiti, there's on-site management that immediately takes care of it. That's a little different than maybe a condo project, if you will, or something a little different that way, because then you've got 83 individual owners and now we got to get the board together to say, okay, do we spend these monies? So this is an on-site management. It's owned by the developers, and it's managed, so going forward. So I would like to ask for your support. I appreciate the opportunity. I'd like to make myself available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Through the chair. With your experience, and especially with mixed use and infill sites, can you explain your confidence in the parking that you're providing and how that will transition and affect the surrounding area?
Well, there's a couple things that happen. One is it's a rental project and they're smaller units. More than half of these units are either a studio or one bedroom, and then about 45% of them are 2 bedrooms, give or take. The TCP plan requires a range of 83 approximately parking stalls to 120. We're 106, we're at the higher end, so you could, if you compared it to 83, say we've got 20 some odd extra, if you will, and you could reverse that. The beauty is you have walking distance to major transit, and that's a huge plus. We have done many projects at a one-to-one parking. In Oakland, they've asked us to do a project with no parking because they want to force transit. Obviously, we're at 1.3 stalls per project. So we feel that given the unit size, the rental mix, and this absolutely supreme location right next to a large transit node, that we're overparked with regards to the residents. And then secondarily, with regards to the retail, obviously we're replacing retail. Staff at their independence did extensive studies, and obviously we looked at those. There's a substantial amount of parking in the area, and hopefully the retail will be successful. Obviously you guys know the Main Street better than us, but we're hoping that it will be successful. I did want to point out the retail that is being proposed is not a formal sit-down white tablecloth restaurants. These are not designed for a large kitchen, if you will, so that you've got this huge mass of people coming. It's more cafe, takeaway, and gathering place, a sense of sense of purpose. So very much complementary to the rest of Main Street there. So we're very confident that the parking will work. And quite frankly, the next generation is not even asking for parking stalls. Our projects in San Francisco, they've unbundled them to where outside people can rent the stalls because they just sit there vacant.
Anything else? Rico?
Real quick, just as far as if this should pass the council this evening, as far as construction is concerned and labor and prevailing wage, how are you on that?
Well, prevailing wage, we're not involved in that on this site. As it relates to labor, we've built in all of these communities, have a great relationship with the labor unions. You can check our history, our record, and we sit down with all of them as we get ready to start a project. Obviously, we have big concrete work, that goes without saying, and then we'll cascade from there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, this time I'd like to open up the public hearing. Would members of the public like to address us on these items? Just tell us your name and your street, please.
Robert Rico, 7th Avenue. I have a couple questions. I've got too many and I'm not going to ask them all. I heard what David said about constantly changing the ability to constantly change the TCP conditions. I'm not happy with the way that's going. I'm really concerned about parking and how far away is the bus stop, north and south? Do you have to walk all the way up to El Camino or farther to be able to get the bus if you wanted to use that for transit or transportation? How far is the train station to the tenants that may move in and live there? Are they going to have to walk to the train station, or are they going to have to walk to BART if we're trying to cut down on giving them parking spaces? One of the earlier proposals that fell through for that site did propose to put some parallel parking on Mastic. This apparently does not show any on-street parking on Mastic or on Taylor. One of the earlier proposals also talked about having some interior parking spots that would be available to the public without having additional on-street parking or off-street parking. I don't think people are going to walk very far to get there. I'm not going to park a block or two away in one of the existing parking lots and walk all the way. So I think the parking and how to utilize how close the public transportation is a concern that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay.
Jamie Monazon, 3150 Crestmore Drive. I also work downtown at the Chamber of Commerce, and I see a lot of people walking to and from the transit area. I would like to thank Tom for his presentation today. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. For the 27 years I've lived here, it's always been a question to me, why is downtown look the way it does? Why isn't it being improved? When I speak to the business owners on San Mateo Avenue and I talk about the potential of new buildings and the excitement of new residents coming in, many of them say, that's a long story. We've been hearing that for many, many, many years. At this point, and it's no criticism to anyone here, but at this point, it looks like we're ready to go, and I'd hate to see anything get in the way. It looks to me as if staff has done an excellent job. All of the proper research has been done. We know what the standards are. We've exceeded what the standards are, and I think it's time to just get moving. And I'm excited to see what's on the horizon for San Bruno, especially for downtown. And many people are using bikes now, they're walking, they're trying to be healthier, and that is the next generation. My daughter is a high schooler, she likes to walk even to Tanforan, and we live way up in the hill because she wants the exercise. So that's what I'd like to see happen, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Marty Medina, Garden Avenue. I received Centennial information this week, and I quote from the message from the mayor and the city council that San Bruno is known as a city with a heart. With that in mind, I'm asking you just for a little bit to lose sight of the revenue, next week's election, and everything else, and concentrate just for a little bit on the people that live right next door, one street over, detailed in the attachment 16 in your packet. Because in our neighborhood, we already have a parking problem. Our neighborhood has numerous apartments along with single-family homes. But it's something we've grown accustomed to, where sometimes you have to kind of block the sidewalk a little bit to get your car pulled up. Sometimes you may even have to block your own driveway so you can fit in and get close to your house, which obviously is something that everybody wants. The parking count shown in your attachment verifies the existing condition. In this parking survey, I quote, "Parking is considered at capacity at 85%. Well, Milton Avenue currently has 91%. Garden has 92%. San Anselmo has 93%. And Florida Avenue, and I believe it was 42 parking spaces, has 100%. So right now, it just take one car from anywhere to go in there from a new development. Where's that person going to park? But this, we talked about the numbers already. Normally this would require almost 200 parking spaces because what everybody's talked about, you don't include the commercial. It was all units. And this is the commercial property, 7,000 square feet. Where are the workers going to park? Yeah, maybe they're going to take transit, maybe they're not. Where are the customers going to park? So the study mentioned the overall parking area in downtown, and that's 1,000 feet away. The most northern, largest lots that we have are far away. So where are these people? How are they going to get to where they want to go? Well, you know what the answer is. They're going to go right over to the other side of the street and take somebody's parking space, and it's everybody's parking space, right? But that's going to bump somebody over. It's going to bump somebody over. And we already, as shown in your own survey, it's already at 190%. So I know this timer's going off, but if you can just give me a little bit more time, I definitely would appreciate it, okay?
We have a long agenda, so wrap
I
it up
understand.
very quickly.
This is a very important project to everybody. But I'm asking you just to think about that. How's that going to affect us that live already there? It's great. You know, it's a great project, but at the very minimum, there's still a chance to get a win-win here, right? Because that's what we should try. You should be trying to do for us, to protect us that currently live here, not the new business, not the new residents, but the people that are already here. So, I strongly disagree with the council's detailed findings for approval. This project will create a hardship for the current residents, but still we can do win-win. We should have a parking permit program within the area that was shown up there earlier, all these impacted streets, between the hours of, I don't know, 9 to 6, 9 to 7, whatever it be, figure it out, okay? Hire another consultant to figure that out for us.
I'm asking you to wrap it up, please.
Okay, so please remember the current residents, put yourself in our position, place the quality of their life higher than a developer's profit. Please prove that San Bruno really is the city with the heart, because it is not just a motto, it is a way of life and a way of consciousness.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Russ Steins, Reed Avenue. I'd just like to say that it is true that we do need to think about why we are doing what we're doing up there. It is about the residents. I know you guys all went up there when you got appointed and you got your positions and you thought, what could I do? It was to protect the people of San Bruno and to keep some amount of urban living here. I particularly like urban living, and I know I don't live up on the hill where none of this will affect me. I do live kind of in the TCP, and it might not necessarily affect me, but my neighbors are going to get crushed by some of this, and I just find it unconscionable, and I ask you for some conscience here. Why are you up there? You're up there to help the existing residents and the existing businesses of San Bruno, and I understand we need more revenue, and I understand that, and we do need to make some exceptions, but we need to make them with a big-time conscience, and we need to really think about what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Perry Peterson, Scenic Court. I agree with the two previous speakers that thinking of how to protect the local residents is an important idea. At the same time, I think the city council and staff is well aware of that potential difficulty, and I think you're going to address it. I've lived in San Bruno for over 35 years and watched San Mateo Avenue lose Rhodes Hardware, which I'm sure many of you remember, and that was a real critical loss. That was one of the mainstay businesses on San Mateo Avenue, as I think many people who live here remember. As a contrast, this is an amazing project in many respects. This is the reversal of the damage that was done when Rhodes left and many other businesses left. Yes, we do have some good businesses on San Mateo Avenue, but this project is amazing for so many reasons. Number one, it can start now. Number two, it has a lot of parking. And where is that parking? It's underground. Number three, this is a project that is coming forth by an experienced developer when the city needs it most, and providing the benefits that you hope to get by modifying Ordinance 1284, but this is coming forward to do in a major way what the TCP would like to do. It's got retail and commercial. Probably as important as anything, it's new and it's highly visible. This will make a change in San Bruno far greater than I think many people realize. I think the developer may realize it, but it's so visible. It's right smack on El Camino, even though it's on San Mateo Avenue, and it's in an area that's been essentially blighted for many years. It makes use of the principles of the transit corridor plan using multiple parcels, bringing them together so you get a bigger impact rather than separate developments. And it's got such an example as being so visible. It will be a tremendous example to future development. People will look at that and say, hey, look at that. Maybe I could develop something just down the street. That's going to draw people like crazy. And yet, it is big, and yet it's not very big. It's only 83 units. Even if there are 2 people in every unit, it's not going to flood the streets with people. But what a start. And so I like to commend the developer for such amazing persistence and quick action, and the city staff for doing a hell of a job of working with them, and for the many people in the community as well as the council who've supported this. gosh, San Bruno, it's coming back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Mary Lou Johnson. I am a resident of San Bruno for 38 years. I've raised 2 children in San Bruno. I just want to give you a very brief overview as to why I'm making my comments. My business recently celebrated 63 years in San Bruno. I have seen over 45,000 children and over 83,000 families. And so through those families, I have actually seen and lived San Bruno in a lot of different ways. And part of that, they've owned businesses in San Bruno, they've worked in San Bruno, and they've commuted to and from San Bruno. And for a variety of reasons, some of these businesses and some of these communities' activities have had peaks and valleys, some really good celebrating components and some challenges. And I know that over 25 years ago, a local architect developed a charrette, a design for San Mateo Avenue. It is still there, just a design, and nothing has happened. Although I completely agree and support many of the comments that were given tonight and the concerns through parking and a variety of other comments, I think that right now we are being challenged, and it's important that we recognize this as a challenge for our future, and that it is a good challenge. And San Mateo Avenue is, the issues that have come up are more than a quarter of a century old. That's old. I mean, that's a reality. 25 years of just standing still. And I don't want to give you all the details of all the places I've served in San Bruno. However, it is my involvement and my love for San Bruno that I do get involved. I've served on the 75th anniversary of San Bruno. Now it's 100. Crime prevention for over 6 years, and many other committees. I was really proud to be part of implementing curbside recycling when there was a huge opposition to curbside recycling, and look at where we've come from that. And I do serve on the Planning Commission, so I've had the opportunity to see hundreds and probably thousands of projects in my 25 years. I am speaking tonight as a citizen and not as a commissioner. And so I think having a plan for San Mateo Avenue is vital in its surrounding areas. It's long overdue, and there are many points of views. People are going to agree and disagree, and I think this is a time that if we can really pull our heads together to pull something out rather than keeping a plan in a box or in a project or in a drawer, this is the time to come together. We are going to have obstacles that we need to come together, work with the developer. He's a good developer, he's solid, he knows what he's doing, and I'm proud to support that project. I do want to be sure that we address those issues of the community. And in closing, I'd like to just say that, tonight I was really proud to see that there's a time capsule. 2064 is 50 years from now. I will be over 100 years old. And most everyone, maybe Ben will not be in that area, but most everyone in this room will be at least 85 years old. I mean, let's think about that in reality. And who are we building this future from if it isn't for our youngsters, our children, our community? We can't think about ourselves. We have to think about the future. We've got to do it well, and we've got to do it right. And we've got to do it together. We can't take a position against each other. We may not agree. We don't have to be clones in this. We don't have to be Siamese twins. But we must take a position to move forward and to do this on behalf of our city. And all of our officials in the back, they won't be here. They won't be around for all of these pieces. So we've got to think beyond the situation. And so I ask that this $35 to $40 million project is huge. How often will we get this chance? It took a lot of effort to get this project pulled together. We've seen some vacancies, we've seen some vagrancies, we've seen some horrible things. And dark places, lack of use, become unsafe places. And so do we want to continue? We've got a beautiful end of San Mateo Avenue that we move forward. Do we want to see that being developed with other people making those decisions besides us making those decisions? So I'm asking you and my San Bruno community to stand behind this project and come together in a way that we can actually do it well together. So thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Bencone, Fleetwood Drive. I would just like to offer my support for this project and just note that, as some have said before, that this sets a very high bar and a very visible bar for future development. I think that's what we need to start off the rejuvenation of our downtown. So just another voice supporting this project and hoping that it moves forward and quickly. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we're not going to close the public hearing because we have Irene coming back for the last two items, but we will vote individually on these four. Any council discussion at this time? Ken?
I'm anxious to speak, and I think the theme that was that was spoken in those last few minutes has been time. And it just, as I was listening, and Perry, I mean, that was very articulate, very, very passionate. I thought back 40 years ago. I was an architecture student, and we're studying about the death of American cities because of suburban sprawl. Now, San Bruno might not have died, but the downtown really struggled because of a regional shopping center, Tan Fran. And now we've gone full circle. So fast forward a few decades, I've been sitting up here for 18 years. And so that's nearly half my life I've been trying to resurrect the downtown. And I can't be prouder. But I do have concerns, and I've voiced my concerns in emails, and I voiced my concerns to the developers about the parking. Because I believe in the transit corridor plan. I believe that there's a new revolution on how to develop, the downtown, how to develop this part of the city. I'm so proud that from one end of the city to the other, we have made a difference sitting up here, and through the staff and through public and private partnerships, we're taking advantage of that. Yes, there's a concern about how trends are going to be and how parking is going to be, but I promise you, if we had stuck to the old plan, if we had stuck to the old ordinance, these applicants would be sitting here. That property would stay vacant, and we would be fending off criticism on why can't we get something done. So San Bruno has, I believe we've had this stigma for many years being Johnny-come-lately. We were one of the last communities to implement redevelopment, and we took full advantage of it, and then we've lost it. And we don't have that carrot anymore, other than a burgeoning economy right now. And Signature Properties has come to the rescue. And they could wait. I disagree. There could have been a developer that could probably put 25 more units in here if they wanted to spend more money and put more parking underground. Because Measure N, would allow, 4 stories here. But they see the benefit. They see, like Perry said, this is more than 83 units and 7,000 square feet of commercial. This is an image change for San Bruno. This is going to be seen by more than just our residents and our workers and our businesses. So I'm excited as ever. I'm proud of it. And just like what the person on the Planning Commission said, this is what the Transit Corridors Plan is all about. And it's been sketches, it's been diagrams, it's been thick books and things, and we're seeing it being implemented right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rico? Michael?
Thank you. I don't think anybody disagrees with the vision, and I know a lot of time and effort was spent on developing that vision, and we all know that downtown needs a shot in the arm. But some of the comments I'm hearing, especially from people that participated in that development, and they're concerned about the changes that we're making now. I know you explained it's an evolving dynamic. We're going to continue to see things. So I'm concerned about just that erosion of the the bar that we're setting, and it does seem like we're going to have to continue making concessions. Now, not speaking at all to the vision and what needs to happen downtown, I know the item before us today is very specific, and it's about changing very specific things, and I don't think I'm opposed to approving what's before us, allowing the residential units on the ground floor. That seems reasonable. I believe any similar project in neighboring communities probably has that same structure, so I don't see that as something that I wouldn't support. I know that if we decided not to support that, it would definitely derail this project, and I'm definitely excited about seeing something new downtown. Something that looks this nice is definitely going to help, but it's hard not to listen to those concerns that I'm hearing from my neighbors. And it's like opening Pandora's box to all the other developments that will follow this one. And as somebody said, it's setting the bar, but it sets a lot of different bars. It not only sets the bar for the quality and the the aesthetics, but it also sets a bar for the density and for exceptions to parking and all those things that will impact our quality of life in the surrounding neighborhoods. I lived in San Francisco, and I think it's a completely different dynamic. I left San Francisco for a reason. I wanted the backyard and a little more space than what I had. And yeah, I didn't need a car in San Francisco, but I couldn't do the same thing living here in San Bruno. So I wonder, when this project is completed, are the people that are moving in here going to be the type of people that don't need cars, or are they going to be people that do need cars? And it's hard to say who's going to come to San Bruno. I know that people in San Francisco, they still don't need cars, but I know that something that I've heard discussed a lot in our communities out here in the peninsula is how do you close that last mile of your commute? And so yeah, we're going to put people right next to a train station, but if their final destination isn't also right next to a train station or somewhere that's commuter friendly, then they're still going to need cars. So it's really going to depend. So unless people live and work here in the city, which would be nice, I see that it could potentially cause a lot of problems to have that additional density. And again, not necessarily the first project, but the accumulation of projects over time. So I still have concerns, but like I said before, I think that's what's before us today is a reasonable request in allowing the exemption to the ground floor residences, and so I think I'm in favor of moving forward with that.
Thank you. Rico?
There were some concerns addressed. One is about parking permit, and I believe, staff correct me, but there is a process to go to the Traffic Safety Parking Commission to address those issues, as they did where the old train station was further down on Huntington. And there is a process and protocol in which residents or a neighborhood can come together and request that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And also, there was a question in regards to, as far as the staff that would be on site, is there any type of a shuttle, or is there any type of encouragement as far as that was concerned?
And Vice Mayor, are you talking about a car share or ride share program? Something like that?
That, as well as the staff and where they were parking, or is there assigned?
There is a requirement that, as Matt indicated, that they provide a transportation demand management program on site, and they'll need to provide clipper cards or equivalent to the tenants and also the employees in the commercial portion. There'll be 54 bike racks within the downstairs area of the garage, 10 bike racks outside and available to people in the surrounding area. There'll be a car share transit information kiosk that will be required to be maintained by the property manager of that development project. So yes, there are a number of TDM measures that are required as a condition of approval, recommended condition of approval for this project.
Thank you. I like some had said in the audience, as well as, being here quite a while now, my whole life. I do remember San Mateo Avenue, before the malls. I remember going to that theater. Remember the Ross for men and the Ross for women clothing store, one on each side of the street. Why it was on either side, I don't know, but that's how it was. The Rhodes Hardware that was mentioned, the Pet World, the Lullaby Lane. I can go down a list of what was once, and that was before Bay Hill, that was before the shops at Tam Fran. I do know that that building has been vacant for quite some time. You've got it at that end, and you've got the bank at the other end. And honestly, you need to start doing something to improve the vision, to improve the site, and the enthusiasm to bring business and people to downtown. I do know that's been boarded, and staff has gotten calls from me that says somebody broke in. So they have to send the police, they go through. There's been, we can go on, but that project is sat idle. And I know back when it was Taylor Street Bar and Grill, when there were food establishments, when there was Jack's Drugs, when the bars were established, all of that foot traffic and or parking, certainly in those days it wasn't about commuting, it was about driving or walking. So I do know that there was a more vibrant time where parking may have still been at times challenged. I think we do need to be concerned. We do need to always be at the forefront of that. But I do think that you're talking about a development that will move that project, that area, and that future together as a community. I think we need to look out for each other. And I do think that I don't know the developer and the applicant personally, but I've heard some things. I've checked for what I can for my resources, and I've heard that it seems sound and that you would do right by San Bruno, because obviously I can tell you we'll be watching, and you would hear from us soon if anything other than a good, solid quality facility is established there. That does make a huge significance to San Bruno and its future.
All right, just a couple of quick comments. I had the pleasure of working with on the subcommittee with the applicant. Come a long way, worked very, very hard, went through the whole planning process. I know it was mentioned that the TCP is being adjusted internally when Mr. Rico, I believe, said he wasn't happy about that. It is, in fact, as the staff said and the developer said, it is a live document. The only thing set in stone that I see is that hideous superstructure sitting there for 10 years, with vagrants going in and out, graffiti up and down, fencing around it, and not benefiting anyone. That's the only thing that's set in stone. So the TCP, I worked on that for a long time with an awful lot of people. It is a live document. It will be adjusted internally just as we see fit, frankly, and we've done it this time. A lot of comments made about being sensitive to the neighborhood. If this doesn't pass, we are being totally insensitive to the neighborhood to let that monstrosity sit there any longer than it has to. People have talked to me and this council for many years about why can't you bring business in? Well, you can only bring business into this city if you make it attractive for them to come to this city. And we've had some very wonderful opportunities with great business owners. Jack's Restaurant came to us and said, I want to do this, whereas we got shot down with a number of other people. The developer came to us and said, hey, I have an idea, and what can we do? And I'm really going out on a limb to try to get some overpriced 3 bars to make this a bigger type of investment for us and a bigger and better structure for you and livable working space. So they went out on a limb, and I think it's wonderful that tonight, hopefully, listening to the other comments, we're going to support them. It's, as Mr. Peterson said, wow, this is great. I, too, remember all of the stores in San Mateo Avenue and San Bruno, and it's good to have some of those things back. I don't know if you've seen the article, and it was a whole number of pages in last Sunday's Chronicle about South San Francisco and what's happening on Grand Avenue and all the different stores and things that are starting to bubble up there. We worked very hard as a council and made some very big strides to try to work with Caltrain to get a grade separation on the 5th worst, most dangerous crossing in the state of California. Worked very, very hard to get that. Councils before us weren't working with them, and look what we have now, all right? That's an anchor in the north part of our town, and this development will be an anchor in the south part of our town, and I look forward to those 2 anchors working right towards the middle. So I think it's a very, very good development, and it will benefit all of us. With that, we have 4 items here to vote on before we ask Mrs. O'Connell to come back in. The first one is to adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the San Bruno 2009 General Plan to conditionally allow ground floor residential uses on all streets in the downtown CBD character area except San Mateo Avenue. Would someone like to introduce that resolution?
I'll introduce.
Vice Mayor Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item number 2, we're asking to adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan to conditionally allow ground floor residential uses on all streets in the downtown CBD character area except San Mateo Avenue.
Through the chair, can I ask one final question on these? Because we're conditionally allowing it, that condition, can somebody speak to what approvals would be required for that condition? Is that something that the Planning Commission is going to approve, or is that something that comes to the council?
In this particular case, this is coming to you for this particular project. Henceforth, though, unless the project would come to you because it's bundled with entitlements, policy decisions, the Planning Commission would take a final action. So if there's a legislative action involved in the entitlements going forward, the whole package would come to you. If it's a standalone conditional use permit, final action would be by the Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission. Thank you.
Okay. Someone like to introduce the second resolution?
Through the chair, I'll introduce.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina,
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item number 3 is waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance amendment, Chapter 12.96.120 of Title 12 Land Use of the San Bruno Municipal Code to conditionally allow ground floor residential uses on all streets in the downtown CBD zoning district except San Mateo Avenue, and to ensure density requirements and setback requirements are consistent with the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion to waive the first reading.
Second.
Is motion second to waive the first reading on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And I'd like to introduce the ordinance.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina,
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. And item number 4, adopt a resolution approving a conditional use permit to allow ground floor residential uses and a parking exception to allow the proposed development with the number of units and parking spaces currently proposed.
Through the chair, I'd like to introduce the resolution.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina,
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. I'd now like to ask Council Member O'Connell to come back in, please. We can address items 5 and 6. We have 2 more items to address. Item number 5 is adopt a resolution approving installation of 2 loading zone spaces adjacent to the project site along San Mateo Avenue. And item number 6 is adopt a resolution approving an architectural review permit for the Plaza, a mixed-use project at 406-418 San Mateo Avenue.
Thank you. As stated, an architectural review permit is also required for this proposed project. I'll give a very brief presentation on the overall project evolution. Staff worked very closely with the applicant on a preliminary basis regarding the architectural appearance of the structure. Plans were first submitted to staff in January of 2014 and were reviewed by Larry Cannon, the city's architectural peer review consultant. The initial direction from the city and Mr. Cannon was to modify the design to be more consistent with the 2009 approval and to be consistent with the TCP design guidelines. The project was reviewed by the Architectural Review Committee and Planning Commission. The Planning Commission adopted all resolutions recommending that the City Council approve the project as proposed. Since the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant has further refined the proposal by incorporating additional architectural elements. Those elements include a more defined cornice element, recessing windows, incorporating additional awnings, and by including a raised roof for the corner element. Staff is in favor of these changes. We find that the additional architectural components further enhance the architectural appearance of the structure, and we do find that those changes are consistent with the TCP design guidelines. Additionally, as the Community Development Director noted, the applicant has relocated the fitness room to the second floor level and incorporated an internal hallway connecting all but one of the commercial spaces to the dedicated commercial trash room located on the northern edge of the property. And this was consistent with staff's previous recommendations. By relocating the fitness room, a new commercial space was created along San Mateo Avenue, which would further activate pedestrian activity and contribute to an overall and more active downtown environment. There was a question from a member of the public regarding what recommendations were not implemented. And when the project was first submitted, staff and Larry Cannon, the city's peer review architect, had a recommendation to increase the retail depth. And the thought behind this recommendation was that deeper retail depths would appeal to a broader range of potential commercial tenants. However, by relocating the fitness room, an additional commercial space has been created along San Mateo Avenue. Staff finds that there is sufficient retail space as proposed that could be divided in a way that would appeal to a broader range of potential tenants. You'll also notice that there is a resolution before the City Council tonight regarding 2 loading zone spaces adjacent to the project site along San Mateo Avenue. Staff recommended that the applicant incorporate 2 loading zone spaces to accommodate deliveries for the commercial businesses as well as residents when moving into and out of the complex. The Traffic Safety and Parking Committee reviewed this request at the September 3rd, 2014 meeting and supported staff's recommendation to create these 2 additional loading zone spaces. The loading zone hours would be 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and during the non-loading zone hours, the general public would be able to use both spaces. Staff is supportive of the project, and we do find that it would provide an improved visual anchor at the southern entrance to the downtown. The project would be a catalyst for economic development and revitalization in the greater downtown area and transit corridor plan area. Staff would recommend that the City Council approve the resolutions to create the 2 loading zone spaces adjacent to the project site along San Mateo Avenue, as well as the associated architectural review permit. In addition, I'd like to point out that the findings of fact are included as an attachment within the staff report. Additionally, the associated conditions of approval for the project are included as an attachment to the architectural review permit resolution. Staff consulted with various reviewing departments, and all of those comments were included as conditions of approval. This concludes the second portion of staff's presentation. It's my understanding that the applicant will go into a bit more detail about the architectural elements. I'd be happy to answer any clarifying questions that you have at this moment. Thank you.
Any questions for Matt at this time? Ken?
I had a question as far as since you mentioned the corridor for the commercial spaces and their access to trash. What about the corner unit? The corner unit is the one that does not have access to that corridor. Where will its trash be, and how would you be proposing that?
The corner unit would not have direct access to the internal hallway connecting it to the commercial trash room. However, they will still be utilizing that commercial trash room located on the northern edge of the property. My guess is that there is going to be some sort of opening within the residential lobby, which would allow access for that commercial space, allow access to that internal hallway, providing access to the dedicated commercial trash room area.
I'm not really in favor of that. To put that on the tenant, I would like to see a connection. There's a lot going on, and I know this is a schematic of how we might lay out that commercial tenant. But we also have a very large lobby with a ramp right there, and I think there's space to be able to, make a door into that lobby from the commercial tenant. but I just don't want, I mean, if we don't provide something, then I just anticipate seeing garbage, on garbage day out there. And,
One thing I would like to note is that we do have a condition of approval stating that garbage shall not be located within the public right-of-way at any time, including at the time of pickup.
okay.
And if I might add to that, the applicant will be making a presentation as well and may have some thoughts on how to address that concern. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for Matt?
I'll wait for the
Okay.
presentation.
Tom, would you like to address the council?
Once again, I'm Tom Qualia, Signature Development Group, the applicant. I want to read into record. First, I agree with the staff report for both first tranche and the second tranche. We agree with the conditions of approval that were included in both. I was remiss in not saying that before, and we agree with the staff presentation. With regards to the design, I will address the trash first. So that particular tenant space is the smallest space. And there are, in fact, 2 trash areas in our building. So there's the major trash area down on Taylor Avenue. You see trash room down there. And then we also have a trash room at the other end called the commercial trash. So what's envisioned for this node tenant would be they would have the ability to use the other trash room that is down on Taylor. So that would solve that. The second part of the whole trash issue is because we're a large enough building, all of the trash for both the commercial and the residents is stored inside and is not put curbside. Recology, we met with them 3 different times. We're large enough to where they will come and with the building maintenance manager, they will come and take the trash directly out of the building, dump it, and put the trash back in. So nothing is brought out on the curb, which is unlike the rest of Main Street, if you will, or San Mateo Avenue. So that's the first. The second is, I just wanted to address quickly the loading zones. So there's 2 new stalls being added, if you will, for the public. And we didn't get into the details when we went to the parking committee, but I think they are allowed to go till 3 p.m. We don't need that much time. There's not that much delivery. So we have no problem shortening that up to the normal, which would be about noon. So if the loading zone is 8 to noon, and then about 11:30 is when things kind of get cranked up downtown, then those stalls would then be open to the public. So I'm fine with a condition of approval that reduces those hours from 3 o'clock down to noon, because then it's basically 2 stalls on the curbside available to everybody.
Can you address the necessity to have them?
I think we just had a back and forth. It's a great idea so that for the retail, everything's front-loaded. So the retail delivery truck can park, front-load those stalls, and then secondarily, anybody moving in or out of the building, just like our project in San Francisco, there's an early morning loading zone. It's very controlled so that when a tenant moves in and moves out, they can use the loading zone as well.
Well, I'm just going to say it now. I mean, a tenant can go into the garage and move in. And if anyone familiar with San Mateo Avenue, the delivery trucks don't even look for loading zones. They stop and they double park. So I'm just thinking that, I mean, all this talk about valuable parking, that make it for loading, it's probably not going to be available for when those deliveries are made.
I'm going to let staff answer the question because we did not push for the 2 stalls. If I'm open to them being unrestricted, it doesn't,
To comment on that, we did see the opportunity to provide an area that could be used both for parking and for loading. And so the idea was to provide an option for trucks not to park in the center of the street, and also for people wanting to move in or out of their units, that there would be some space for some limited time during the week that could be used for loading and unloading. So the idea was to create additional space. The idea here is that the sidewalk area would be reconfigured to actually add this area. So these would be additional spaces over and above what we have today.
The second part is with regards to the design. And if you would indulge us, I'd love to have Hawaii, our architect who's been in the trenches with us from day one, to chat a little bit about the evolution and the detailing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ruane and council members. My name's Hawaii Lai. I'm from YHLA Architects. We are a 10-person firm from Oakland, California. We've been in business for 35 years. Obviously, I haven't been there that long. But it's really gratifying to be here again tonight. We were involved with the previous entitlement that was entitled in 2008. So for me, the process has been close to 10 years for me to come back here. So it's extremely satisfying to be back here again. And to start, I'd like to thank Matt and staff for preparing a really well-done staff report. I think it demonstrates very well how the interests and the vision of the developer aligns with the transit corridor plan and also the interests of the city. So, I mean, really, I have very few things to say. I just want to focus on two things. One is the really major design decisions that we have, but before I get to that, I do want to expand on the design process that Matt briefly mentioned. We started on this project in September 2013, and our first work session with staff and Mr. Larry Cannon was around January of that earlier this year. And subsequent to that, we've had 3 additional review sessions with Larry Cannon and staff prior to submitting to the city. So by the time we got our plans into the planning department, we've worked out a lot of changes to color. What you see today, the warm color palette, was a result of that work. The balcony detailing, the use of brick veneer at the ground floor, the use of awnings and sunscreens, all those came from our collaboration with staff and Mr. Larry Cannon. So I think, you know, the result speaks for itself, and I think it's a testament to the process. Now, getting into the actual design elements, I don't want to touch on the tiny details, so I do want to focus on the main decisions. One was the corner. I think everyone agrees that it's a very, very prominent site, and I think it will do a tremendous job of setting this site, framing the gateway to the downtown neighborhood, instead of what we currently have, an empty lot and some buildings that definitely seen better days. Now, as far as the design is concerned, we wanted the corner tower to stand out, but still maintain its cohesiveness with the rest of the building. We don't want something that just sticks out for the sake of staking out. And to do that, we really kept the color palette complementary to the rest of the building, but introduced some different different proportions, if you will. If you notice, the windows are taller and skinnier at that location. We also have unique detailing, such as metal sunscreens, a sweeping awning on the ground floor, and really strong cornice and pitch roof at the corner. So everything about it comes together and speaks to it being a corner, you know, a focus for the project and also for downtown. And then as we move down towards San Mateo Avenue, again, if you focus on the board, you'll see our main focus is really to break down the massing by using a lot of articulation. One main goal is to reduce each element or module to about 25 feet, and which is what the transit corridor plan had recommended as part of the design guidelines. And additionally, we use the very light beige, light cream color as an element to catch your eye. And as you move down the project, you notice we dropped it down to a 2-story element towards the very end. I think that's an acknowledgement of the existing buildings which are predominantly 2 stories in height. So we're going to focus on making a giant facade look much more articulated and in character with the downtown building. And then as we move to the Mastic side and Taylor side, I want to touch on the unique opportunity and also challenge that we face in this project. We have frontage on San Mateo Avenue, on Taylor Avenue, and also on Mastic. So unlike a lot of infill projects, we have to do a 360 design. So every part of the building is articulated. And the challenge in that is we have very different characters along San Mateo versus Mastic. And Taylor in itself is very transitional from El Camino versus heading down towards Mastic. So the challenge is how do we respond to the different context, but still keep the building looking as a single project versus a mishmash of multiple different concepts. So on Mastic Avenue, our decision was to use and introduce a new, a more residential design material, which is a siding. It gives it a little bit more texture, brings in a smaller scale to that facade, and that allows us to also use a lot of trim and board and batten detailing between windows and around windows. And it recalls a little bit of the craftsman style that you see in a lot of residential buildings. So that treatment, and based on some feedback we got from the Architectural Review Committee and also the Planning Commission, we wrapped that treatment all the way to the north-facing facade as well. So I think to sum it up, it really is a product of collaboration and just everyone pitching in and listening to what everyone has to say about the design. And really, I think I'm very confident that this will help transform the downtown, especially this part of downtown. And I think everyone can be very proud of the building we have. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for the architect? Okay, thank you very much. Members of the public like to address us?
Robert Rico, I just wanted to support the two loading zones. I've complained for a long time about double parking of the delivery trucks because there weren't back access, so having even two limited down there definitely will help keep the trucks off of the street. So I hope you support that.
Thank you.
Russ Steins, Reed. I just want you guys to know that I am in support of this building. I think the existing height limits are great. I'm a little concerned with the parking. So I do ask you guys, when this does happen, to, if you see a problem, maybe somebody could implement permitted parking if, it does impact the neighborhood. This instance is great. The downtown where the buildings are is great, but if the TCP does if your Measure N does pass, is when I start to be concerned, because basically Measure N gives you 5, my vote, without asking me what I think. So I just want you guys to know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Cohn, Fleetwood Drive. I am 100% A-okay with the aesthetics. My comment may be more of a management policy, actually, and it has to do with the use of the balconies on the building and how management addresses what can go out there and what can't and what that looks like. I've seen many beautiful developments with cluttered, ugly stuff on the balconies, and it really kind of ruins much of the aesthetic for me.
I wanted to say I'm also in support of the last two that you're considering tonight. And also, I know that they won't be speaking, they won't be speaking to us about Measure N, but just to comment, there will be an opportunity for us to have a parking structure if Measure N is passed, so something to consider.
Thank you. Any comments from the applicant regarding the use or non-use of the balconies?
Two responses. One, just to point out the mastic elevations were dropped down. They were about 5 to 7 feet shorter than the rest of the building as we transition around the corner. So that was another thing that we did with the building. Great comment about the balconies, and quite frankly, I completely forgot about that. Here we spent all this time on this beautiful building, these spectacular balconies, and we don't want laundry hanging up there. So we will work on our restrictions. We do have strict restrictions. It is a rental building. I echo his comment. I would hate to see anything out there than a couple of nice chairs and a little bit of a table for somebody to sit out there and watch the parade. So we will work with staff to make sure that we get that incorporated into our management side.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, there is actually a condition of approval that requires that the property management plan specifically address the use of balconies, what can be stored and cannot be stored on balconies. So, as Mr. Qualia has indicated, they will need to address this very issue in their property management plan. Thank you.
All right, Ken?
Well, while he's up there, I just want to compliment the architect, and Larry Cannon has been, gold for, for this city for many years. And as a designer, I rarely, I can't remember where I've ever had any objection to what Larry has recommended. Maybe my projects or some, but I really like, and I know there's been a lot of tweaking of the design and everything, and I just really like looking at it. I understand, all the, being an architect, I understand all the lingo and everything. The rhythm, the proportions, even the different window shapes and everything works well. I do want, there is a concern about the brick veneer, and I'm assuming that is just real brick, but mini brick being applied, to a substructure. So it will be, it's a lot cheaper to do than just real brick anyway. I do want to also have a concern, and I'm sure you've experienced it, but canvas awnings. I love canvas awnings, but over time, and it's usually the short amount of time, they fade and they get damaged, or they show their wear. And so just want to know how you speak of that, and how we can get it to keep looking the way it does in the drawing, for a long time.
So I went back to
Thank you very much. It's a great looking building.
I went back to San Mateo Avenue before the hearing, and 90% of the awnings are material, canvas or some other material. The other percentage of the awnings are an actual structure, if you will, part of the edifice of the building. And we have both of those. As you saw, we have the entry canopies over a couple places, and then we have the awning canopies. So to take it to a louver on the ground floor or to a metal awning would not be consistent with what exists in downtown. And so we would like to stay with the material at this point in time so that it has a little bit of a softer feel and a little bit more complementary feel. I look at Starbucks, I looked at the Mediterranean market, and they're in good shape and they're maintained. Once again, we're going to own and maintain the building, so I'm pretty confident that we'll be good to go with the materials.
Good. Anything else for the applicant? Okay, at this time, we're going to close the public hearing, and once we close, you'll be precluded from speaking to us again about this. Is there a motion to close?
So move.
Second.
Motion and second to close the public hearing on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, we have two items. Any discussion before we adopt some resolutions?
Through the chair?
Michael?
If we decide not to put the loading zones in, can we still have parking spaces available and then evaluate this at some later time without impacting the project?
Yes, you can. So the idea would be that the sidewalk area would be reconfigured to add the 2 parking spaces, but those areas would not be signed to allow for loading. They would simply be used for parking.
Okay. And my thought process is that once we understand what the turnover is of the apartments and we know what type of businesses are there, it might be prudent to wait and know those things before we designate those spots, and especially with the concern over the number of parking spots in the area. If we could add parking, even if we may have to take 1 or 2 away later, I think might be a more prudent course. So, my thought. Thank you.
And then again, another option that was mentioned earlier is that the time frame, instead of 7 to 3, could be reduced. That's another option for you to consider as well.
And I would think at the inception of the building, you're definitely going to need loadings. I mean, when it first gets started and up and running until it actually gets established. So that's just my thought on that. Any other discussion or action by the council? Item number 5, adopt a resolution approving installation of 2 loading zone spaces adjacent to the project site along San Mateo Avenue.
Through the chair, so will we have an additional review process or is that going to be left to the to the applicant and staff? Or, I mean, because we're dealing with a resolution to add 2 loading zones as designated in the spots that they are designated, and if I have an objection to it, then I want to be able to say that now, or what flexibility in changing that is there?
We do not anticipate another review. So the plans indicate the 2 spaces that can be used for loading between 7 and 3 o'clock as currently proposed. So you could indicate that you would like that time frame shortened, or that you would want those spaces used only for parking and not for loading. Those are a couple of options. But whatever you direct tonight or take action on tonight, we would not expect to come back again.
I don't want to belabor this over loading zones. I mean, we're a $40 million project and we're fighting over signage. I'll wait. My concern is that it's not going to be enforced, is that loading zones will be signed and there will be, commercial customers using them, and at a time when a delivery truck comes and they're not available, and so they still double park. I don't see a real need for tenant use because they have the garage and there's elevators. So at the most, I'd say, 1 loading zone. I also have a concern about the tenants. I mean, the commercial tenants, to have a loading zone in front of their establishment, which would be a valuable parking space, for them. Which one do you select? So, if the loading zone is needed, I'd go with 1, but definitely not 2.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, please, Irene, because you haven't got
that
to speak yet.
I haven't. I understand everybody's objections and all the other things. I'd like to suggest a compromise that we do 1 loading zone and that we restrict the hours from 6 to 10. And that way, most commercial properties aren't open until 10, and we wouldn't be blocking any of those. If there are problems with the loading, people not recognizing that, I'm sure they can call the community service people or the police, and they'll send someone over and give them a ticket, and after a few times of getting tickets, they won't do it anymore. So we can do that, try it out for 6 months after everything is built, and see if it works. So that's my suggestion.
I was thinking to compromise was to shorten the time to the noon, as we had indicated, so maybe you go from the 8 to noon. Just because if we're talking also for the potential, we have folks there that may use it for moving as well as the businesses. If we want to go down to 1, I guess that's a compromise we all can live with for now. If we all can say that and do 1, and if we want to narrow it down from the 3 o'clock and roll it back to a sooner time, at least there's a start. We obviously can always change that, if not, correct?
That's correct.
See? So we even have an option to come back, okay? If that works with everybody, then maybe that we can agree to that.
So what is it that works for everybody?
Yeah.
I think we're down to 1, and I think we have said instead of 3 p.m. Are we saying to make it earlier? I was suggesting.
I was suggesting 6 to 10, and the reason I said 10 is because most commercial places open at 10, and that would increase by 1 the commercial, the availability of
and I was going to
customers.
suggest 12, so we've got 10 and 12, so anywhere in there.
Anywhere, whatever. something. We'll shorten the hours, we'll make it 1.
I guess we can go to,
and
there's
we'll-
a suggestion, go to 11, okay.
And we'll do that.
Okay, so what do we need to do to modify the resolution?
So if you simply give us the direction, and I'm hearing, I think, it would be Monday through Saturday, and the loading zone would be 1 stall, not 2, but 1 stall, and I think I'm hearing 6 a.m. to 11 a.m., again, Monday through Saturday, correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
we would, based on that direction, we would so modify the resolution.
Okay, so we can introduce a resolution based on those modifications.
Yes.
Okay, would someone like to introduce the
I'll
resolution?
go ahead and introduce the resolution as amended.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. And our last item 6, adopt a resolution approving an architectural review permit for the Plaza, a mixed-use project at 406-418 San Mateo Avenue.
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Wonderful. Congratulations to all of us.